The Emmy Awards were last night, and though I didn't watch them because that's not my jam, I keep seeing a whole bunch of different pieces, both on social media and in the news, about the winners and folks who took home awards last night. And time again, right next to such and such person won this award for Best Actress, Best Supporting Lead, comes this other tagline that I could not help but notice a pattern. First trans person, first woman of Asian descent, first black woman, right? All of these things. And something that it made me think about is something that I see quite often, honestly, is a celebration around diversity and a hyper focus on representation. And so, representation specifically in thinking about how a presence of a person who holds social identities where they have typically not occupied in a positional role or an accolade like the Emmys. So what that looks like in the workplace is Dr. Claudine Gay, who was celebrated as the first black woman to ever hold the seat of president of Harvard University. When we lead with the merit and the celebration of a person based solely on their race or their gender or their sexuality on one of their social identities rather than on their accolades, rather than on their level of expertise and their performance, we do a disservice to that person. We do a disservice by only taking them and highlighting only their social identity rather than thinking about the totality of their experience, their merit, their performance that warrants and awards them and grants them space to that new level, right? Or that new office that no one's ever reached before. And what can that result in? Well, that hyper focus on representation, if not checked correctly, right? If not supplemented with an examination of systems, policies, and structures within an organization or an entity, still leads to tokenization, still leads to assimilation, can still lead to bias, can still lead to harm. And so one might feel like there's a conundrum. Well, we finally have the person in a higher office, right? It reminds me of when President Barack Obama was inaugurated into office and had gone through a couple of years of the presidency. Then folks would say, well, I thought that would solve for racism. No, that's not how that works. You can only fight against a system or systemic isms, being bias, prejudice, discrimination, with real structural change through equitable and inclusive measures. Not just by getting someone with a new identity that you haven't seen represented before. And so maybe this is my musing. Maybe you might just think I'm rambling. But for the person or for the group out there that is celebrating, right, shifts and changes and advancements, but solely highlighting a person's identity, I think you're doing a disservice. And here's my call to action. We can do both. We can celebrate someone and seeing someone represented in a space we haven't seen before, right? Especially when we get to positions of authority, power, and influence. And at the same time, my ask is back that up and say, yeah, like Dr. Claudine Gay might have been the first black woman in that office, but at the same time, also lauded, right, for being a published author, for having 20 plus years of experience, for being a scholar, all of these things, right? It's really important that as we continue to celebrate folks who are occupying spaces where we haven't seen them represented before, that we also supplement that celebration with merit and accolade. Because unfortunately, there are too many naysayers, too many people who are looking for the downfall of the very groups that we're celebrating to go right back, right? And to reverse time. And they're going to be able to be successful in that effort if we're not also able to articulate that these folks are merited, credible, experienced, qualified, and deserving. Just my 2 cents.